On the coldest night of December 2019, Alex Stone walked into a Manhattan homeless shelter with $5 in his pocket and a story no one would believe. Just 18 months earlier, he had been living in a penthouse apartment with a view of Central Park. Now, at 40 years old, he owned nothing but the clothes on his back and a notebook filled with ideas that would eventually make him millions. The shelter staff saw him as just another victim of New York City's merciless economy. They did not know they were looking at a man who would become one of the most inspiring success stories of the decade. A man whose journey from homelessness to millions would change countless lives. Life had not just knocked Alex down, it had crushed him completely. His investment firm collapsed during the financial crisis, taking his savings with it. Medical bills from his mother's cancer treatment drained what little he had left. Within months, he lost his home, his car, and his dignity. He joined the invisible army of New York's homeless, sleeping in shelters, subway stations, and occasionally on park benches. But Alex was different from others in the shelter. Each night, while everyone else slept, he sat under the harsh fluorescent lights writing in his notebook. He was not recording his misfortunes. Instead, he was creating a detailed plan that would take him from this shelter bed to a millionaire's office. His unique position as a homeless man with 15 years of Wall Street experience gave him insights others had missed. He watched how money moved through the city at street level, how immigrants with nothing built thriving businesses, how street vendors turned tiny profits into growing enterprises. In the world of finance, he had learned how millionaires multiplied their wealth. Now, in the streets, he learned how people created wealth from nothing. Alex realized he was witnessing something extraordinary. His homelessness was not his end. It was his education in what he called street-level economics. In his notebook, he wrote, "Day 1 of my journey from homeless to millionaire." People would have laughed if they had read it. But over the next 3 years, this homeless man would build a business empire that would earn him not just millions of dollars, but also the respect of the same bankers who had once turned their backs on him. His journey would prove that success stories do not just belong in movies, they can start in homeless shelters on cold winter nights, with nothing but a notebook and an unwavering determination. This is the story of how Alex Stone transformed from a homeless man into a millionaire. More importantly, it is proof that rock bottom is not a destination. Sometimes it is the foundation upon which remarkable futures are built. The Manhattan Central Library opened at 9 a.m. sharp. Alex arrived at 8:15 every morning, waiting in the bitter cold, his worn backpack clutched against his chest. The security guard often watched him with suspicion, but Alex knew appearances did not matter here. Knowledge was free, and he intended to grab every bit of it. The library became more than just his shelter from the cold. It became his war room for planning his comeback. Each day brought new challenges, finding a clean bathroom to wash up before the library opened, keeping his clothes presentable enough to avoid complaints, battling hunger pangs that made it hard to focus on the business journals he studied. But Alex had learned that discomfort was often the price of transformation. Mary Anderson, a veteran librarian of 20 years, noticed his dedication. While other homeless visitors slept in the warm corners, Alex sat upright at his desk taking meticulous notes. His background in finance showed in the way he analyzed business reports and market trends. After a month of watching him work, she began setting aside the Wall Street Journal and Business Weekly for him. One particularly cold morning, Mary found Alex deeply absorbed in an article about the rising costs of food delivery services. The piece detailed how major delivery apps charged restaurants between 25 to 30% of each order. Alex's hands trembled as he wrote in his notebook, not from the cold, but from excitement. His years on Wall Street had taught him to spot market inefficiencies. His months on the streets had shown him how small businesses struggled. That night, in his corner of the crowded shelter, Alex could barely sleep. His mind kept returning to the dozens of family restaurants he passed daily. The Thai place where the owner worked 16-hour days, the Mexican restaurant where 3 generations cooked together, the halal cart vendors who could barely afford the delivery app fees. They all shared the same problem. They were being crushed by delivery costs. In his notebook, illuminated by the dim shelter lights, he wrote his business plan. Not in fancy business school terms, but in simple truths he had learned on the streets. Problem: big delivery apps take too much money from small restaurants. Solution: create a community delivery network. Use local knowledge, keep costs low, build trust from the ground up. The next morning, Alex faced a crucial decision. He had $112 left, enough for 10 days of food or enough to print 200 flyers at the library. His stomach urged him to choose food. His mind reminded him that opportunities rarely waited for comfort. He spent $80 on flyers, leaving just enough for 3 days of bare survival. For 2 weeks, he walked every street of Chinatown and the Lower East Side. He visited small restaurants during their slow hours, his worn shoes carrying him through snow and sleet. Most owners saw a homeless man and turned him away. Some called security. A few crumpled his flyers without reading them. But Alex had learned persistence during his months on the streets. Rejection was just another form of market research. On his 15th day of walking the streets, exhausted and having not eaten for almost 2 days, Alex stopped to rest near Golden Dragon Restaurant. The smell of food made his stomach ache. As he sat there, gathering strength to walk back to the shelter, something unexpected happened. The restaurant's owner, Mr. Liu, came outside to throw away boxes and noticed Alex's carefully written business proposal lying next to him. "You wrote this?" Mr. Liu asked, studying the detailed cost analysis. Alex nodded, slowly standing up. He had learned to move carefully to hide his hunger and exhaustion. Mr. Liu looked at him for a long moment, then at the worn Goldman Sachs business card Alex still kept in his proposal folder. "Come inside," Mr. Liu said. "We will talk while you eat." Over a bowl of hot soup and dumplings, Alex's hands trembled as he explained his plan. He was surprised when Mr. Liu revealed his own past. 20 years ago, he too had started with nothing in America. He had worked as a dishwasher while learning English at night. Now he owned 2 restaurants but was losing money to delivery apps. "Your numbers are good," Mr. Liu said, pointing to Alex's calculations. "But why should I trust a—" He paused, searching for the right words. "A homeless man?" Alex finished quietly. "Because I have nothing left to lose and everything to prove." Mr. Liu made a call to his friend Mrs. Patel, who owned the Indian restaurant next door. She arrived skeptical, but listened. Her delivery costs were eating 60% of her profits. Down the street, the Martinez family's Mexican restaurant had stopped deliveries completely, losing nearly half their customers. The meeting lasted hours. They questioned everything. How would Alex manage without an office? Where would drivers report? What about insurance? Health permits? Alex had answers from his research at the library, but he also admitted what he did not know. His honesty surprised them. "Start small," he proposed. 3 restaurants, 2 weeks. If I fail, you lose nothing. They agreed, but with conditions. Alex would need proper clothes for meeting customers. He would need a phone. Mr. Liu offered his restaurant's back office to use between 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. daily. Mrs. Patel's son, a law student, would review all agreements. The Martinez family would help find drivers from the community. That night, returning to the shelter, Alex faced his first business challenge. He needed $70 for a basic phone and clean clothes from the thrift store. In his notebook, he calculated that not eating for 3 more days would save enough money. As he made that difficult choice, he remembered his Wall Street days when he had spent more on a single lunch. The next 2 weeks tested everything. Using the library computers, he posted delivery job notices on community boards. His first hire was Jason, a college student who knew every Chinatown shortcut. But Jason quit after 2 days, overwhelmed by the pressure. Maria, a single mother from the Martinez's church, proved more reliable. She brought in 2 more drivers, both recent immigrants who needed flexible work. Alex managed everything from his notebook, keeping meticulous records of every delivery. Without a computer system, he created a paper schedule that worked like a precise dance. Drivers picked up multiple orders along planned routes. When orders were late, he delivered them himself, sometimes running through the streets despite his hunger. The first week brought problems. 2 drivers never showed up. One customer complained about cold food, but Alex solved each problem personally. He worked 18-hour days, dividing time between the shelter, library, and restaurants. At night, he updated his logs by shelter light, planning better routes, adjusting pickup times. By the end of 2 weeks, they had completed 98 deliveries. Only 3 were late. Every penny was accounted for in his notebook. His system saved the restaurants an average of 24% on delivery costs. Word began spreading through the neighborhood. On a rainy Tuesday evening, Mr. Liu called a meeting. "We have 20 more restaurants asking to join," he said. "But first, you need to stop sleeping in the shelter. There is a small room above my storage area. It has a mattress and a desk. Not much, but better than the shelter. You can stay there until you find a proper place." That night, looking at his notebook under proper lighting for the first time in months, Alex allowed himself a moment of pride. He had gone from handing out flyers to managing a small delivery network. But he knew this was just the beginning. In his notebook, he wrote, "Phase 1 complete. Now the real work begins." The small room above Golden Dragon became Alex's world. A thin mattress on the floor, a wobbly desk from a sidewalk sale, and a single light bulb that buzzed through the night. But it was his. Every morning he woke up at 5 a.m., washed in the restaurant's bathroom before anyone arrived, and prepared for the day ahead. His notebook now contained 10 pages of detailed plans. This was his chance, and he could not waste it. The first month tested his resolve. Managing even 10 restaurants proved harder than his days at Goldman Sachs. Every delivery needed perfect timing, every driver needed careful training, every restaurant had different requirements. Some wanted drivers to wait while customers checked their orders. Others needed specific temperature-controlled bags. The details were endless. His system started with 5 drivers, each serving 2 restaurants within walking distance. He created what he called delivery clusters, restaurants serving similar cuisines, sharing delivery times, located within 3 blocks of each other. Each cluster had its own driver who knew the local streets, spoke the languages, and understood the food they delivered. The community watched him with growing curiosity. The homeless man had become the delivery man, the coordinator, the problem solver. When delivery bikes broke down, he fixed them. When orders were late, he ran the deliveries himself. When restaurants had complaints, he listened and adjusted. His Wall Street salary was gone, but his Wall Street work ethic remained. Money was still tight. The business earned barely enough to pay the driver's minimum wage plus tips. Alex kept nothing for himself beyond 1 meal a day at Golden Dragon. Every spare dollar went back into the business. He bought proper delivery bags, printed menus, basic supplies. Mr. Liu watched this with growing respect, occasionally slipping extra food onto Alex's plate when he worked late. The first crisis came when Jack, his most reliable driver, stole $50 worth of food. The restaurants wanted to call the police, but Alex remembered his shelter days. He called Jack to the office. The story tumbled out. Family problems, a sick mother, no money for medicine. Instead of firing him, Alex worked out a repayment plan and helped Jack find weekend work at one of the restaurants. Word of this spread through the neighborhood. More people came asking for delivery jobs. By the third month, the business served 15 restaurants with 8 full-time drivers. Each driver earned minimum wage plus tips, and more importantly, became part of the restaurant community. They knew the customers by name. They remembered preferences. They treated the food with respect. Customer complaints dropped to almost zero. Then came the big threat. Uber Eats noticed their success and slashed delivery fees in the neighborhood by 40%. 6 restaurants immediately called Alex in panic. This was the moment that would make or break everything. He asked Mr. Liu for an emergency meeting space. That night, 20 restaurant owners crowded into Golden Dragon after closing hours. Instead of competing on price, Alex proposed something different, a true restaurant alliance. Not just shared deliveries, but shared resources, bulk ordering of supplies, combined marketing, cross-promotion. When one restaurant was busy, others would help with overflow. When one needed ingredients, others would share. The delivery service would become part of something bigger. The idea was good, but implementation proved challenging. It took 6 weeks of nightly meetings to work out the details, how to share costs, how to maintain quality, how to handle disputes. Alex spent days creating systems, learning from each failure. His notebook filled with revisions and adjustments. Success came slowly but steadily. A Chinese restaurant shared its vegetable supplier with the Indian restaurants, reducing costs for everyone. A Thai place helped a new Vietnamese restaurant with staff training. The Mexican restaurant's tortilla supplier began serving the Mediterranean places. The community grew stronger. By month 5, the business had expanded to 25 restaurants with 12 drivers. Alex now had help. Priya, Mrs. Patel's daughter, who had finished business school, joined full-time. She brought technical skills Alex lacked, creating proper computer systems to replace his notebooks. Together, they expanded the alliance services. The turning point came at 6 months. The business now served 35 restaurants. The alliance shared everything from storage space to staff. Alex had moved from his small room to a tiny studio apartment. He paid himself a modest salary, enough for basic needs. But more importantly, he had built something that worked. One evening, walking through his delivery zones, Alex passed the shelter where his journey had begun. A young man sat outside, writing intensely in a notebook. Alex saw himself in that focused desperation. He sat down beside him. "The most valuable thing I learned in business," Alex said softly, "is that sometimes you have to lose everything to see opportunities others miss." He pulled out his business card, simple but professional. "Come see me tomorrow. Everyone deserves a second chance." Later that night, reviewing the day's deliveries in his small apartment, Alex looked at his original notebook. The worn pages contained his first desperate plans, but now they also held something else, proof that success stories do not always start in boardrooms. Sometimes they start on shelter beds with nothing but hunger and hope for fuel. The opportunity that would transform Alex's life arrived unexpectedly on a busy Friday evening. A well-dressed man ordered from 5 different restaurants in his delivery network, requesting everything be delivered to a conference room at the Marriott Hotel. Alex decided to handle this unusual order personally. At the hotel, he found 20 investors having dinner while discussing food delivery technologies. The man who placed the order, James Morrison from Silicon Valley Ventures, had deliberately tested Alex's service after hearing about it from local restaurant owners. The investors were impressed by 3 things: the quality of hot food from 5 different restaurants arriving perfectly on time, the professional service, and most importantly, the story of how Alex built it all from nothing. James stayed behind after the meeting. "Your delivery network has solved problems that billion-dollar apps still struggle with," he said, spreading out data about Alex's business. "Local knowledge, community trust, shared resources. We have been trying to build this technology for years, but you built it with nothing but a notebook." The next morning, Alex found himself in a real conference room for the first time since his Wall Street days. James and his team spent hours reviewing every aspect of his business. They were not just interested in the delivery service, they wanted the entire community alliance model. "We can help you expand this to every neighborhood in New York," James explained, "then to other cities, but we want to do it your way, keeping the local focus, building real communities, not just another app." Alex thought carefully about the opportunity. He gathered all 35 restaurant owners for their input. Their concerns matched his own. Would rapid expansion destroy what made their alliance special? Could their community model work in other neighborhoods? Alex spent 3 days refining his original business plan. His proposal to the investors was unique. Each neighborhood would operate as its own alliance, sharing resources locally. A central technology platform would connect them, but local managers would make decisions. Every driver, every restaurant, and every manager would own a small part of their local alliance. The investors offered $30 million for 60% of the business. Alex negotiated 2 key points. First, 20% of the company would be shared among the original 35 restaurants and 12 drivers who had believed in him. Second, 5% would create a fund to help other homeless individuals start businesses. Success came faster than anyone expected. The model proved perfect for post-pandemic recovery. Small restaurants across New York needed exactly what Alex had built. Within 1 year, the network expanded to 15 neighborhoods. Each alliance followed his original principles: local drivers, shared resources, community support. By the end of the second year, the business operated in 12 cities. Alex's delivery network became famous for transforming struggling neighborhoods into thriving restaurant communities. Magazine articles called him the community builder. Television shows featured restaurant owners telling stories about the homeless man who changed their lives. When the company went public, 3 years after that first investment meeting, its value reached $2 billion. Alex's personal wealth exceeded $40 million. The original restaurant owners and drivers became millionaires themselves. The Homeless Assistance Fund had helped over 300 people start small businesses. But Alex never forgot his roots. He kept his small office above Golden Dragon, now renovated but still simple. Every morning he walked through his first delivery zone, greeting restaurant owners and drivers by name. His expensive suits and watch were the only signs of his wealth. The shelter where his journey began became home to a free business training center. Every evening, successful business owners taught classes to homeless individuals eager to change their lives. Alex often sat quietly in the back, watching people write in notebooks just as he had done years ago. On the 5th anniversary of that pivotal investment meeting, Alex gathered all the original restaurant owners at Golden Dragon. Mr. Liu, now semi-retired but still making the best dumplings in the city, brought out the notebook where Alex had first written his plans. "Success is not about money," Alex told the group. "It is about seeing value where others see nothing. 5 years ago, you saw value in a homeless man with a notebook. Today, we must keep looking for value in unexpected places." That evening, walking back to his office, Alex passed a young woman sleeping on a bench clutching a notebook. He stopped just as Mr. Liu had stopped for him years ago. Sometimes, he realized, success stories do not end with becoming a millionaire. They end with helping others begin their own journey. In his desk drawer, he still kept his first worn notebook. Its pages contained more than business plans. They held proof that anyone, even a homeless man writing by shelter light, could rise again. But more importantly, they reminded him that true success meant building others up along the way. Your life's greatest chapter might begin in your darkest moment. Like Alex Stone, you carry unique insights born from your experiences, even the painful ones. Success is not about where you start, but how you use what you've learned along the way. Take out your notebook today. Write down your observations, your ideas, your plans. Remember, some of the world's most successful businesses started with nothing but a simple observation of a problem that needed solving. The journey from struggle to success begins with seeing opportunity where others see nothing. Your past does not define your future. Your journey to success starts now with your first step, your first idea, your first attempt to make a difference. The only question is, are you ready to begin?